First impressions last a lifetime. That's a very famous saying that we all know, and it's especially true when it comes to manga, because if that first chapter sucks and doesn't instantly grab your attention, piquing your interest, making you want to read more, then the series will fail. Plain and simple. On the other hand, if the chapter bangs and you instantly get hooked on it, there's basically a 100% chance you're going to continue to read the series and possibly binge read as much as you can without taking a break. So I had a great idea. How about I read the first chapters of the most popular mangas out there and rank them? So that's what I did. Obviously, I can't read every manga, so I decided to get some of the best representatives of shonen, which is Naruto, Bleach, and One Piece, also known as the Big Three, and decide between those which of the Big Three has the best first chapter. To be 100% transparent with you guys before getting into this, I haven't read or watched One Piece or Bleach at all. I'm very ignorant when it comes to most other series, and honestly, I don't know too much about those two. But I have fully watched Naruto multiple times, but I've never sat down and read the first chapter. So when it comes to Bleach and One Piece, this will be a 100% brand new experience and will be all new to me, so my reactions and thoughts are as genuine and real as they come. But when it comes to Naruto, since I know what happens, there won't be any surprises, but I won't let that affect my rankings in any negative way. Let's start with Bleach first. Alright, that's the end of the chapter. Cool. That is all 60 pages done. Nice. Yeah, very cool chapter. Seems like he's pretty strong. He's got a lot of energy in him. What was it? Spirit energy. But he's got a lot of it. But pretty good chapter. I want to read more. I like it. It was a good chapter. So yeah, that was my instant thoughts after reading just the first chapter, but I'll go a little more into depth here. The chapter ended up being 60 pages, which is normal, but it is quite a lot because, in my opinion, I read Boruto, which is 40, and Boruto's 40 goes by fast because, that's the GOAT manga. But anyways, yeah, 60 pages, it did take me a lot longer than I'd like to admit. It took around 20 minutes to get through, which I did take a phone call in the middle of it, and I wasn't trying to read quick because I was taking in the art and what was happening, so it was slightly longer than it could have been, but let's actually talk about the chapter. So this is Ichigo, and just like Kendrick Lamar, he sees dead people. And it turns out his immediate family can see them too, although not so clear, other than his dad who can't see them at all. I guess Mr. Kurosaki is genetically inferior to his spawn. Ichigo also apparently likes to fight, as within the first 5 chapters, he's beating the brakes out of Lil Yama and Lil Toshi. Side note, I think the Lil names are less comical and more cringe, but it's not that big of a deal. These guys get quickly dealt with by Mr. Strawberry. And the whole reason he's even doing all of this squabbling is to help a ghost that latched onto him finally move on and rest peacefully and leave him alone, which is understandable. Who wants a dead person floating by your shoulder all day? So it seems like, from my understanding of this chapter, RMC Ichigo has some serious spirit energy within him, and since he can directly see Soul Reapers and the Hollows without being one himself, he's kind of like a natural talent prodigy of sorts, which is pretty cool. My interest is definitely peaked, and honestly, I would like to read the rest of the series someday. I'll rate this first chapter a solid 8 out of 10. It was good and it has a unique concept, and seeing ghosts and that whole soul society thing, which seems pretty cool. But the concept of natural born talent with an abundance of power within them is nothing too new to me, so I'm not going to sit here and go crazy over it, but I'm also not going to dock points. This is an older manga, so yeah, it is fair. There was nothing I initially hated, and it left me wanting to read more opposed to not really caring. We'll do Naruto next, and I'm excited because this will actually be my first time reading the first chapter of the manga, but like I said before, there won't be any surprises. I already am familiar with the series, so keep that in mind. Actual banger of a chapter. I won't instantly give it my ranking now, but this chapter's got basically everything you'd want in a first chapter. It is insane. What can I say? It's Naruto, it's peak. It's, other than Dragon Ball, the most influential anime and manga of all time. It is goated. This chapter, much like Bleach's, is 60, which is pretty standard. I don't know why I need to bring that up. I did think it was going to be shorter. I don't know, maybe I'm an idiot who doesn't read manga often, but yeah, 60 pages. It took me once again around 22 minutes for me to fully complete and enjoy, and I'll just give you this ranking right now. For first chapter, it's like a 9 out of 10. It has everything I look for and enjoy in a first chapter while doing it better than Bleach did, in my opinion. The emotion was top notch, and I actually felt something when the backstory of Iruka was brought up and talked about, and how the parallels between him and Naruto are when he was a kid. It was great. Obviously, there was the drop of him having the demon fox residing inside of him, and it did force you to read more to learn and stuff. It was just perfect. I've said this before that I hate the pervert jokes and all the corny jokes about being perverted, so the whole ninja centerfold and everyone flying away bleeding from their nose getting knocked out, I do think is lame, and especially that being the whole reason Naruto even got past Hiruzen, the Hokage, to even get the scroll is kind of lame to me, which is why I can't give it a 10 out of 10 for being a first chapter. I'm not really too sure what else to say right now about Naruto because, my whole channel is based around the series. We all know I love it, you guys love it. So yeah, let's just move on to One Piece before I give my final verdict and last minute changes to the rankings and opinions. Lastly, we got One Piece, and just like Bleach, I know very little about the series. In fact, the only knowledge I know is that there's a character named Ace and he is no longer with us, and the characters travel by boat, yet the fans claim that they outscale End of Shippuden Naruto, so this is surely going to be fun.
It was cool, I guess. I don't know what else to say initially, but I don't know. Yeah, it was alright.
So One Piece. And straight off the rip, from this first chapter, the art style wasn't as distracting as I initially thought it would be. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying I was able to completely look past it because it wasn't enjoyable to really look at the characters and everything, but it wasn't a huge jumping out factor when reading the chapter. Granted, there weren't too many experimental or different type designs. I'll say they were all pretty basic, so later on down the line, I could see this problem I have with the art style being more prominent. My initial thoughts of this chapter was, it was pretty good, although there wasn't anything that was intriguing me to read further like there was with other series that we looked at, which is quite a problem since that's the whole point of a first chapter. It did still have some good to it, as Shanks, the dude's cool. He came off as a quote-unquote coward after letting himself get pressed by the weirdo land bandit guy, but when it came to the gang, he don't play around. A very stereotypical shonen character, nothing too crazy out there, but it works. This last one is less of a first chapter thing and more of an overall story thing for me, and that is, what the hell is a gum pistol? Yeah, this thing he hit the Loch Ness monster with is whack. Obviously, I'm only one chapter in, so this could change, but if this is his signature move, like how Naruto has Rasengan of Shadow Clones, and Ichigo has a Bankai, if Luffy's main attack or personal move is Gum Pistol, I can't do it. It looks corny, childish, and is overall a lame-ass attack. He really is just the Walmart Mr. Fantastic, the we have Elastigirl at home type ripoff, and it's not really something I would personally find entertaining enough or hyped up reading for over 1,100 chapters, which is also another one of the series' downsides for me. Look, I love a long series, and short series hurt when they end because they usually suffer from lots of things not being fleshed out, but having over 1,100 chapters is goddamn absurd. For how big this series is and for how hyped up it is, I honestly expected a lot more from this first chapter, which isn't really a valid criticism of the story, but more of the fan base and consensus I see online of One Piece apparently being the best thing ever published, so I'll give it a 7 out of 10 in all honesty. Alright, so now that all 3 chapters have been read and my initial thoughts after reading the chapters are out there, it's time for me to alter my rankings and actually decide on which one's the best and which one's the worst. And to do this, I'll give each series a ranking out of 10 in these 7 categories. Art style, main character's motivation, dialogue, other cast, am I hooked, best panel or page, and story setup. Starting with Bleach again, I'd give the art style a solid 7 out of 10. It does have that old feel to it as it did come out in 2002, but it doesn't feel dated, which is nice. And it also is just pleasing and nice to look at. I have very little complaints, but it is still a 7 out of 10 as I know from just random panels I've seen of Bleach on Twitter. And just art from the series later on, there is a drastic improvement, so yeah, 7 out of 10, not a bad grade at all. For main character's motivation, a hollow broke into this dude's house and blew his father's back out and almost ate his whole family, and that's basically it. No one ended up dying, but by him being the whole cause of the hollow showing up, he does feel guilty for the whole thing, and yeah, that's basically all we get. It's believable, but nothing too insane or cool. It's not Tanjiro getting his whole family slaughtered, which is completely understandable, but yeah, that along with his natural talent for seeing not alive things is enough for him. 6 out of 10 for that. Dialogue, I already stated my issues with the little Yama and a little Yoshi or whatever, so that's gotta knock it down some points for being cringe to me. And the interactions between himself and his family, along with the others, it does come off as a little childish and corny, but he is just a teenager, so for the dialogue, I'll give it a 5 out of 10. It wasn't the best thing I've read. The other cast or other characters introduced was honestly alright. I like the Soul Reaper girl and the whole hollow thing is cool. There's not really too much to go on since it is just the first chapter. Obviously, a bunch of characters aren't going to be introduced and fleshed out, but the cool samurai girl gives us a 6 out of 10. Am I hooked? Yeah, I want to read more. This chapter did good, but I'm not fiending to finish the series. So since it did get me hooked and I would like to eventually read this fully, I'll give it an 8 out of 10. The best panel or page out of this chapter would be the one when he sliced the Hollow's arm off with the splat written behind him. Is so sick. Sadly, it's not like a spread or double spread, or else it would be way higher up. I love the black, dark shading, emo, this dude is cold type vibe it's clearly got going on, so I'll throw it in a 6 out of 10. How well did it set the story up? Yeah, it introduced the Hollows and this whole other like dimension with the Soul Society and the Soul Reapers and Hollows that normal people aren't allowed to see, and the chapter ended with him becoming a Soul Reaper himself in a sense. So yeah, it's set up for the rest of the story well. 9 out of 10, you can't complain. All of these marks added up gives Bleach a 47 out of 70 in my make-believe scale, which there's no idea how good that is until you actually compare it to the other two. So let's get into One Piece. Yeah, this one's gonna piss a lot of people off. Art style. I've been very transparent about my distaste of it, and it's one of the biggest reasons I've never bothered to pick up the anime or manga. But reading this first chapter, it wasn't as distracting as I thought it would be, which is good. But the art style is supposed to be one of the greatest things about a manga, and to me, a very strong proponent of if I can enjoy the series, and unfortunately for One Piece, it falls short here. 4 out of 10. If the art style actually pushes me away from the series, it's just not something I could get into. Main character motivation. I don't even think Luffy has one that's been explicitly stated in this chapter, other than he just wants to, which I guess is alright. It's like the bare minimum you could have as a motivation. So like a 4 out of 10, I guess. The only way you can get lower is if you don't even want to become a pirate in the first place, but you were just born on a ship and forced into the life. The dialogue, it didn't really affect me in any way. The emotion was never conveyed well in my opinion, and certain things that they said just threw me off, so like a 5 out of 10. At least it has words and there was no perv jokes, so like, you gotta give it bonus points, I guess. The cast of other characters. Finally, something I can give a respectable score on solely because of Shanks. The guy seems cool and he was clearly that you can mess with me but touch my friends, I'll pop off type from the start. But because of that and what he did for Luffy, I'll give this category a 7 out of 10. Higher than Bleach because I just think Shanks was better in this first chapter than the samurai girl was in Bleach. At least he did something other than get outperformed by someone with no training or combat experience. For the best panel and page, it once again gets a better score than Bleach because it actually has a double spread or full page that is pretty cool. We got Luffy using his extendo arm to punch the water monster, which is by far the best page in this whole chapter, so yeah, I'll give it a good 8 out of 10. Am I hooked? No, not really. There is nothing compelling me to read on to the next chapter or any feeling of wanting to know what happens next. And I'll be honest, a portion of that is just the length of the manga. I don't want to read 1,123 chapters of something I don't even find visually appealing, not to mention the lack of motivation from the main character that was displayed, so yeah, I'm good. I'll give it a 3 out of 10 here, and the only reason it's not a 1 or 0 is because of how big and hyped up this series is, and I have a few friends who this is their favorite series, so it most likely has to be good. So maybe there's a chance later on in my life that I'd read it, but I'd almost rather like read anything else. Did this first chapter set up the rest of the story to take place? Yeah, I guess it did. It ended with him like actually setting sail on a tiny boat, so who knows where that will lead him. It did lack any special mystery to be solved or pulling force in my opinion, and I'm guessing for this series to be as long as it is, it has to have something else later on that he's working towards, so I'll give it a 7 out of 10. With these added up, it gives One Piece a lousy 38 out of 70, 9 points lower than Bleach. Finally, moving on to Naruto, which is probably why most people who watch my videos are here. For the art style, it is drastically different than it is later on. We all know that, and it's very apparent when reading the manga or going back to part 1 at all compared to like Shippuden or even the end of part 1 of Naruto. But yeah, the art style I like a lot less than I do later on, so because of that, I'll give it a 7 out of 10, just like I did with Bleach. They are different styles, but I do like them both around the same amount. Main character motivation is where Naruto really blows the competition out of the water. This little man is an orphan who's never known his parents. Like, his parents had died within hours of his birth, and the leader of the village stuck this poor baby in the slums with spoiled milk and 25-cent instant noodles. Everyone in the village avoids him and despises him beyond belief because, as it turns out, the beast that destroyed said village and killed countless people was sealed inside of him, and amongst those killed by the beast is his teacher's parents, forcing Iruka, that's his teacher, to grow up being an orphan as well, creating an interesting dynamic between the two of them. All this kid wants is attention and the feeling of being seen, so in order to do that, he wants to become the strongest person and become the Hokage himself, so people will actually see him as a person instead of the nine-tailed fox. None of the other two series talked about in this video competes. 10 out of 10 for motivation. The dialogue here is the most realistic in my opinion and conveys emotion the best out of the big three. Reading this actually feels like these could be real conversations between people, which puts it higher up in score. Where it loses points is the pervert gag. I'm very open about this. I hate basically every pervert fan service gag or trope out there, and Naruto does have its fair share of it, so because of that, I'll give it a 6 out of 10. Naruto's sidecast here in the first chapter is great. Unlike other series, these 60 pages found a way to actually give depth to these characters and make them interesting and make you want to care about them in ways Bleach and One Piece couldn't. And no matter how much you want to joke about the sidecast, like the Konoha 12 later on in the series, to dispute what I said about this first chapter based off that is wrong and just is not allowed. 8 out of 10. Am I hooked? Yeah, this isn't really a surprise. I've watched Naruto 3 times. I make YouTube videos about the series. I'm collecting all of Naruto physically, and I almost have all of part 1 in its entirety on my shelf. So yeah, I'm hooked. 10 out of 10. Best panel or page is most definitely the 1000 Shadow Clones pop-off moment from Naruto. It's one of the greatest double spreads in the whole series, and I actually have the physical volume for this, and seeing it in person is so sick. It deserves a 10 out of 10, no contest. How well did this chapter set up the story? Well, we get this rambunctious kid who learned a forbidden secret jutsu from a scroll, helping him defeat someone who outranks him and his teacher, as well as having a literal beast sealed inside of him, yet they still allowed him to become a ninja, sending him on his way to become the Hokage. So yeah, I'd say so. 8 out of 10. This gives Naruto's first chapter a 59 out of 70. So from worst to best, we have One Piece sitting at a very low 38 out of 70. Next is Bleach with a 47 out of 70, a 9-point lead above One Piece, and coming in first place with the best first chapter out of the big three is none other than Naruto with a 59 out of 70. Thank you all for watching. Leave a comment on your opinions, and if you would be interested in seeing different version of this, comparing the new gen shonen like MHA, Demon Slayer, JJK, and Black Clover, or if you'd like me to switch genres and go to like Seinen, or even do which of the big three has the best first arc, which would be just like this but comparing arc to arc and ranking them. Go ahead and join my Discord. It's open to all subscribers. It's linked in the description. And lastly, if you like this video, go check out my channel for other videos and content. I mainly talk about Naruto and Boruto, but I do sprinkle in other series here and there as well. Have a good day.